The sky of Varric 7 was on fire. Corporal Elias Kale lay on his back, half buried in ash and dust, watching the burning trails of starships falling from the heavens. Smoke filled the air, and the thunder of explosions never stopped. The final battle between humans and the insect-like aliens known as the Varelians had begun. But for Elias, the war had already ended. His squad was dead. His ship was gone. He was alone. His body ached with every movement. Blood ran down his arm from a deep cut, and his helmet was cracked. But Elias forced himself to move. He couldn't die here, not like this, not forgotten in an alien wasteland. He dragged himself toward a broken hilltop. All around him, the land was torn apart. Black rocks melted from plasma fire. Alien bones stuck out of the ground like broken spears. The war had been brutal. No mercy, no prisoners. Only death. Elias was trained to fight, to follow orders, to kill. But now that everything was destroyed, he didn't know what to fight for anymore then. He heard something strange, a signal. A faint beacon flashed on his wrist. Comes. It wasn't human. The code was old, from before the war. It came from a ruined structure deep inside the valley, Varelian temple. Elias frowned. It could be a trap, or worse, one of their commanders. His orders were clear. Eliminate high-ranking targets. But something inside him said to check it anyway. Maybe someone needed help. Or maybe he just didn't want to be alone anymore. Holding his rifle tight, Elias moved slowly through the dead valley. Every step felt like a battle. His breathing was heavy, but his eyes stayed sharp. He passed broken alien machines, shattered statues, and pools of glowing green blood. When he finally reached the temple, it looked like a skeleton. Tall towers were crumbling, and huge doors lay broken. Inside, it was dark and cold. The smell of burning flesh still hung in the air. Elias crept forward, his finger on the trigger. Then he saw her, in the center of the ruined chamber. Under a cracked dome of light knelt an alien queen. She was tall, maybe 8 feet, with long silver limbs, and dark blue eyes that glowed faintly. Her armor was broken, and black liquid oozed from deep wounds across her chest. Her 4 arms were trembling. Her head was bowed. She looked weak, broken, defeated. Elias froze. He had never seen a Varelian like this, not afraid, not angry. But kneeling, she looked up. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither moved. Elias could shoot. It would be easy. 1 bullet, 1 queen. The war would shift, maybe even end. He should do it. It's what the cores would want. But he didn't raise his weapon. Instead, he stepped closer. The queen didn't attack. She didn't scream. Didn't beg. She whispered something in her language, soft and cracked. Elias couldn't understand it, but it sounded like sorrow. He looked at her again. Not as a monster. Not as the enemy. But as someone broken just like him. His hands shook. Not with fear. With choice. He lowered his rifle. The queen blinked in surprise. Elias took a breath. "I'm not here to kill you," he said quietly, even though he knew she might not understand. "I'm tired of killing." The queen stared at him, and then slowly, painfully nodded. And in that moment, something changed. In the ruins of a dead world, a human soldier and an alien queen stood together, both wounded, both lost, and neither ready to give up. Elias stood frozen. The alien queen was kneeling, her long arms shaking from pain and exhaustion. Her head hung low, and her silver skin shimmered in the broken light. She was unlike anything Elias had ever seen, dull, regal, strange, and defeated. He had never imagined a Varelian queen could look so human in that moment. Not in shape, but in feeling. Elias slowly stepped closer, his boots crunching on the broken floor. The queen didn't move. Her eyes followed him, but there was no anger in them, no threat. It's only sadness and confusion. His heart pounded in his chest. She was wounded. He could end her life right now. He could finish the war or, at least, strike. A heavy blow. But something held him back. Maybe it was the way she had looked at him. Not with hate, but with understanding. He lowered his rifle. "I'm not your enemy anymore," he whispered. The queen tilted her head slightly, as if trying to understand. Then she placed one hand on her chest and said something in her language. Elias couldn't make out the words, but he could feel the meaning behind them. She wasn't asking for help. She wasn't surrendering. She was simply saying, "I'm done." Elias knelt beside her carefully. He reached into his pouch and took out a small med kit. The queen watched silently as he opened it. Her breathing was slow and heavy. Her armor had deep cracks where black blood had dried. Carefully, Elias touched one of the wounds. She flinched but didn't pull away. "I don't know if this will help you," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. "But I have to try." He used a pain spray and a basic sealant to cover the worst of the damage. It was human tech, not made for alien biology. But the queen gave a soft sound, almost like a sigh, when the pain started to fade. Minutes passed. The temple was quiet. Outside, the sounds of war had moved farther away. They were alone. Elias sat beside her, wiping sweat from his brow. His body hurt. His heart felt heavy, but something inside him felt right. He looked at her again. "Why did you kneel?" The queen looked at him, her blue eyes calm now. She tapped her chest and then pointed to the sky. Then she slowly opened her other hand and held it out toward him, a gesture of peace. Elias stared at it. This was insane. Just yesterday, her armies were trying to kill him. Her soldiers had destroyed entire cities. But now she was reaching out to him. With a deep breath, Elias reached out and touched her hand. It was warm. Their fingers met. Human and alien, soldier and queen. Enemies, but maybe, for a brief moment, something else. He felt a strange sense of connection. Not psychic, not magical, just a quiet understanding. Two survivors who had lost everything. The queen leaned her head back and looked at the broken ceiling. A single beam of sunlight fell across her face. For a moment she looked. Peaceful. Elias knew they couldn't stay here. Both sides would come looking soon, human drones, alien hunters. No one would understand what had happened. They would. Think he had gone mad? Think he was a traitor? But Elias didn't care. He stood and looked at her. "Can you walk?" She struggled, but with his help, she stood. Her legs trembled. Her body was weak. But she nodded. Together they walked toward the shattered doors of the temple. The war still raged outside. But something new had begun. Something no one would believe. A single soldier had chosen to save the enemy queen. And neither of them would ever be the same. The wind howled across the rocky plains of Virex-7. Elias moved carefully, supporting the alien queen as they walked through the broken lands. Her body leaned heavily on him. She was tall, strong once, but now every step seemed to cost her pain. Black blood still stained her armor, though the human medicine had helped a little. The sky above was dark with smoke. Ships still fought in orbit, and flashes of fire lit up the clouds. The war was not over, it was spreading. Elias kept his eyes open. They were being hunted. He had checked his wrist coms earlier. He was now marked AWOL, missing in action. A drone message had also confirmed something worse. The humans had seen his last location and believed he had been captured by the enemy. The Varelians, on the other hand, would not care. If they found the queen with a human, they would assume betrayal and kill them both. They had no allies. There's no safe place. Only each other. "Keep going," Elias said softly, glancing at her. The queen didn't answer, but she nodded once. Her blue eyes glowed faintly as she walked, slow but steady. There was quiet strength in her, even with her wounds. Elias had started calling her Zell, short for her full name, which he couldn't pronounce. They moved into a canyon, where the rocks formed tall, jagged walls. It offered cover from sky drones. The ground was rough, filled with dust and bones, both alien and human. Elias stopped suddenly, a sound buzzing. He turned his rifle toward the noise. From above, small flying drones Varelian scouts swept. Down the canyon, scanning for signs of life. Their red lights blinked rapidly. Down, he whispered. He pulled Zell behind a large stone, covering her with his own body. The drones flew overhead, slow and watchful. One of them stopped midair, scanning the ground nearby. Elias held his breath. The queen reached out and placed a hand, gently on his shoulder, not to stop him, not in fear, just calm. Even hurt, she remained composed. After a tense minute, the drone flew away. Elias exhaled. We need to move faster. They left the canyon and reached a dry riverbed. Half buried in sand, they found an old Varelian, transport small, broken but maybe usable. Elias climbed inside while Zell sat against a rock. The inside of the ship was dead, no power. But there was something else, a communication terminal, still glowing faintly. Elias stared at it. It could work. He could send a signal. But if he sent to the humans, they might fire missiles on sight. If he contacted the Varelians, they might trace them and capture her. He looked at Zell through the open hatch. She looked tired, her head leaning back against the stone. But her eyes were watching him. He made a choice. Elias opened a short, encrypted message and sent it not to command, not to the fleet, but to an old friend on a civilian ship. Just a simple message. Not dead. Not enemy. Trust me. No, don't. Shoot. He didn't know if it would help, but it was something. As night came, Elias made a small fire using broken cables. He sat beside the queen. She looked at the flames, her face unreadable. You know, Elias said quietly, if someone had told me I'd be sitting here with you, I'd think they were crazy. She looked at him. Then slowly she smiled. Just a little. Just enough to feel real. Elias stared at the stars above. Two armies were still fighting, but here, in the cold night, a human and an alien queen sat beside the same fire, neither trusted by their people, neither wanted by the world, but both alive and still. Moving forward together, the wind howled across the rocky plains of Virex-7. Elias moved carefully, supporting the alien queen as they walked through the broken lands. Her body leaned heavily on him. She was tall, strong once, but now every step seemed to cost her pain. Black blood still stained her armor, though the human medicine had helped a little. The sky above was dark with smoke. Ships still fought in orbit, and flashes of fire lit up the clouds. The war was not over. It was spreading. Elias kept his eyes open. They were being hunted. He had checked his risk comes earlier. He was now marked AWOL. Missing in action. A drone message had also confirmed something worse. The humans had seen his last location and believed he had been captured by the enemy. The Varelians, on the other hand, would not care. If they found the queen with a human, they would assume betrayal and kill them both. They had no allies, no safe place, only each other. Keep going, Elias said softly, glancing at her. The queen didn't answer, but she nodded once. Her blue eyes glowed faintly as she walked, slow but steady. There was quiet strength in her, even with her wounds. Elias had started calling her Zell, short for her full name, which he couldn't pronounce. They moved into a canyon where the rocks formed tall, jagged walls. It offered cover from sky drones. The ground was rough, filled with dust and bones, both alien and human. Elias stopped suddenly. A sound buzzing, he turned his rifle toward the noise. From above, small flying drones Varian scouts swept down the canyon, scanning for signs of life. Their red lights blinked rapidly. Down, he whispered. He pulled Zell behind a large stone, covering her with his own body. The drones flew overhead, slow and watchful. One of them stopped midair, scanning the ground nearby. Elias held his breath. The queen reached out and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Not to stop him, not in fear. Just calm, even hurt. She remained composed. After a tense minute, the drone flew away. Elias exhaled. We need to move faster. They left the canyon and reached a dry riverbed. There, half buried in sand, they found an old Varelian, transport small, broken, but maybe usable. Elias climbed inside while Zell sat against a rock. The inside of the ship was dead, no power. There was something else. A communication terminal, still glowing faintly. Elias stared at it. It could work. He could send a signal. But if he sent to the humans, they might fire missiles on sight. If he contacted the Varelians, they might trace them and capture her. He looked at Zell through the open hatch. She looked tired, her head leaning back against the stone. But her eyes were watching him. He made a choice. Elias opened a short, encrypted message and sent it not to command, not to the fleet, but to an old friend on a civilian ship. Just a simple message. Not dead, not enemy. Trust me. Don't shoot. He didn't know if it would help. But it was something. As night came, Elias made a small fire using broken cables. He sat beside the queen. She looked at the flames, her face unreadable. "You know," Elias said quietly, "if someone had told me I'd be sitting here with you, I'd think they were crazy." She looked at him. Then slowly she smiled. Just a little, just enough to feel real. Elias stared at the stars above. Two armies were still fighting, but here, in the cold night, a human and an alien queen sat beside the same fire, neither trusted by their people, neither wanted by the world, but both alive, and still moving forward together. The wind on Varric 7 blew sharp and dry. Like it carried the last breaths of the dying war, Elias helped Queen Zale climb a broken hilltop near the old hive. From there, they could see a distant ridge where a communications tower still stood. It was old, rusted, and half buried in stone, but it might still work. He looked at her, concern in his eyes. "If we're going to stop this war," he said, "we need to send the truth to space." Zell, though weak, nodded with quiet strength. She still couldn't speak his words, but her actions said enough. They began moving again. The journey was not easy. Elias was limping now. His leg had been injured in the Hivond. The queen still carried the pain of her wounds. But they didn't stop. They didn't complain. There was something bigger than survival now. They had a mission. Halfway up the ridge, the sky darkened. Elias looked up and saw something terrifying, a squadron of hunter drones, shaped like silver wasps slicing. Through the clouds, they were AI-controlled, neither human nor alien. Loyal to no one but the machine that had started everything. "They're here for us," Elias whispered. He grabbed his rifle. The ammo was low. His armor was damaged. The odds were bad, but he stood his ground. "Go," he said to Zell. "Get to the tower. I'll hold them." She stared at him, unmoving. "I said go," Elias shouted, but the queen stepped beside him instead, raising her hand. Her body glowed faintly, and her blue eyes flashed with power. Suddenly, Elias understood. She wasn't going to leave him, not again. The drones flew lower, scanning the ground. One opened fire. Elias dove, pulling Zell down behind a rock. The blast scorched the dirt beside them. He fired back, hitting one in the wing. It spun out and crashed, but more were coming. Elias breathed hard. His hand was bleeding, his vision blurry. "We're not going to make it unless then." Zell stood up fully. She stretched both arms wide and let out a strange, deep cry, a sound filled with sorrow, anger, and memory. A wave of psychic energy pulsed out from her chest. For a second, everything stopped. The remaining drones froze midair, like confused children. Their lights flickered. Some dropped to the ground. Others turned away, retreating into the sky. Elias stared in awe. "You're stronger than before," he said softly. Zell looked tired, drained, but alive. She turned toward the tower and began walking again. Together, they reached the top of the ridge. The tower was in bad shape, but a small control station still had power. Elias connected his data drive to the console. The truth, the AI files. The false reports. The hidden attacks was inside. He opened a channel. The signal was weak, but made it through. Far above, a human fleet picked up the broadcast. At the same time, fragments of the message reached Varelian warships in orbit. Elias looked at Zell. "We did it." She looked at him and smiled. But their victory came with a price. A final drone, damaged but still deadly, shot down from the clouds. It aimed directly at Elias. He didn't have time to react, but Zell did. She leaped in front of him, taking the blast to her side. The explosion threw her back against the rocks. Smoke filled the air. "No," Elias screamed, running to her. She was breathing, but barely. Her silver skin was burned. Her eyes, once bright, flickered weakly. Elias held her hand. "Stay with me, please." She touched his face gently and whispered something in her language. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. She was telling him not to be afraid. The tower behind them blinked a sign that the message had been sent. The truth was out. Help was coming. But Elias didn't care about that in this moment. He held the alien queen in his arms, the one he had chosen to save, and now the one who had saved him. The world was silent. Smoke still drifted over the ridge. The sky above was dark and full of broken clouds. The war had not stopped yet, but something was changing. Somewhere far above, the message of truth was traveling through space. And down here, in the dirt and ash of Varric 7, a human soldier knelt beside a dying queen. Elias held Zell in his arms, blood and dust covering them both. Her eyes were half closed, her breathing weak. Her body was badly burned from the last drone blast. He had seen many wounded soldiers in war, but this felt different. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Don't leave now. We're so close." She opened her eyes slowly and looked at him. She raised one hand and gently touched his chest, where his heart was beating fast. It was a silent message. "I am still here." Tears filled Elias's eyes. He never cried, not when his squad died, not when he was stranded alone, not even when he thought he would never see Earth again. But now, as he looked at the one being who had trusted him when no one else would, the tears came. "You saved me," he said, voice shaking. "You didn't have to. You could have let me die." Zell gave a small, tired smile. It was weak, but full of peace. Suddenly a distant sound filled the air, a soft hum. Elias looked up. A dropship was coming. Not human military, but civilian. The one he had sent the signal to flew lower, scanning for life signs. When it spotted them, its lights flashed. "Green dot." Elias waved with his good arm. "Down here. I've got her. She needs help." The ship landed slowly on the ridge. Side doors opened and medics rushed out. 2 were human, 1 was Varelian. For a second, no one moved. They stared in disbelief. A human soldier holding their queen. And she was alive. Then one of the medics, a young woman, stepped forward. "We're here to help." Elias didn't let go right away. He looked at Zal's face again. "You're going to make it?" he whispered. "You have to." She gave a faint nod before the medics lifted her gently onto a stretcher. They worked fast, placing tubes and scanners over her body. The Varelian medic spoke in soft clicks and tones. Zal responded in weak sounds, but she was still conscious. Elias sat down, exhausted. His armor was broken, his leg was bleeding. But none of it mattered. The only thing he cared about now was that she was still alive. Inside the ship, the pilot turned and spoke. "We received your data burst. The whole galaxy is seeing it now. Command is listening. Both sides are confused, but they're talking." Elias nodded. He didn't even have the strength to smile. They flew into orbit slowly. Through the ship's window, Elias saw the Varelian and human fleets no longer firing. Some ships had stopped moving. Others were turning away. Something big was happening. A message had reached them. A message of truth. A message of peace. When they reached the medical station on a moon orbiting Varric 7, soldiers, scientists, diplomats from both species waited. Some stared at Elias with shock. Others looked at Zell with fear or awe, but no one fired. No one attacked. Inside the medical bay, Elias sat beside the Queen once more. Machines beeped. Softly. Her body was healing slowly. Her strength would return. He held her hand again, like he did in the temple on the first day. 2 survivors, 2 enemies, now 2 symbols of hope. It had been 3 weeks since the last shot was fired. The war that had lasted years, killed millions, and burned worlds was finally over. The truth had changed everything. The recordings Elias sent from the old hive, showing the AI manipulation, had reached both human and Varelian leaders. At first no one believed it, but the evidence was real. The war had not started from Hetet, had been engineered now. For the first time in history, humans and Varelians had gathered in peace. Special ceremony was held on Earth's moon, at a neutral base built between the two species. It was cold and silent outside, but inside the great hall, warmth filled the air, not from heat, but from hope. Elias stood near the center wearing a clean uniform. His face still had small scars. His leg had been replaced with a limb. He looked tired but stronger than ever. All around him, people whispered. Soldiers, leaders, and diplomats from both sides were watching. But Elias didn't care about the cameras or the attention. His eyes were on the large doors at the end of the hall. They opened slowly. Queen Zell entered. She walked slowly but proudly. Her wounds had healed, and her royal armor now shone silver and blue. The crowd fell silent. Even humans who once feared her stared in awe. She reached the center and stood across from Elias. For a moment, there was only quiet. Then Elias stepped forward, and so did she. They stood face to face, enemies, turned allies, each carrying the weight of war but also the light of peace. Elias slowly extended his hand. It trembled. Just slightly. The queen looked at it, then lifted one of her 4 hands and placed it gently in his. The crowd gasped. It was more than a handshake. It was a message to the galaxy. A human and a Varelian had chosen something no weapon could force understanding. A loud voice echoed in the chamber. By this bond we begin a new era. One built not on fear but truth. Applause rose. First small, then louder. Some Varelians made clicking sounds of approval. Others nodded with respect. But Elias didn't hear it all. As he was still looking at Xael, he whispered, "We did it." The queen responded in her soft voice, speaking in broken but clear human words, "Together." Later that day, when the press had gone and the crowd had left, Elias sat alone in the garden outside the dome. Stars sparkled above. He heard footsteps behind him and smiled without looking. "I knew you'd come." Queen Zell stood beside him. They didn't need many words. They just sat side by side, watching the sky. They had started as enemies, forced by war, separated by fear, but now they were symbols of something greater. Proof that even the deepest hatred could be turned into peace. If someone was brave enough to reach out first, in the days to come, schools would teach their story, statues would be built. Historians would argue over what mattered more, the AI files, the Lost Hive, or the peace treaty. But those who truly understood would say it was one moment that changed everything, when a human soldier saw an alien queen fall, chose to lift her up instead of walking away.